to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans, first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. So even though I'm pixelated, we're still going to go with this show live. So hopefully you can withstand me fading in and out of the green screen because I'm literally wearing green in my green screen. Didn't think of that one. All right. So it's not about me and my pixelization. It's about Leora, and she is in our superhero battle room. This is our second veteran spouse that decided to go over and serve our community as a patriot. And this actually happened one after he left the service. So this is a rare treat. And just so you know, we do interview mil spouses, vet spouses, even patriots that go over and serve our community. So we're going to bring her forward, and then you can focus on her instead of me and my green screen. So we're going to bring her forward. Hey, do I have you?
Yes. Hello.
All right. Little less pixelization and more about you. So let's get into the interview. That's why we do these live and raw. So we'll see on how this goes. All right. So our first question is, what inspired you to join the vet spouse community? Because usually male spouses do it by marriage and then they get thrown into it. Kind of a vet spouse is a little different. So we want to see from that perspective.
Yeah. So I actually met my husband when we both randomly moved to Texas. Very different life circumstances brought us into the same state. He's from Colorado. I'm from California. We fell in love. We got engaged. The rest is history. I actually started serving the veteran community in the capacity that I do in my private business. Prior to that, I was working in staffing and was actually trying to hire veterans for long-term federal temp positions, and kept seeing really bad resumes. And I was really confused because I was hiring for positions where I knew a lot of folks from their military service. And at the time, I was actually in a serious relationship with a active duty Marine, although my husband is former Army. And so I asked him, and I said, "Why are these resumes so bad? I know there's a transition program, and I don't understand what's going on." And I learned very quickly that the transition program that touches on resumes and interviewing and just everything in terms of transition to civilian employment was just severely lacking. So I started volunteering, resume review, things like that, just with volunteer organizations as sort of a one-off. I'm here as a resource kind of a thing. And fast forward to a few years later, what ended up being a broken engagement, I was preparing to become an actual military spouse, and was going to be stationed quite literally in the middle of nowhere, right between California and Nevada and the mountains, and was working on my master's degree and wanted to actually use it because I didn't want to go back to school. So I decided to start this business, Career Counseling by Leora, wherein I would be able to serve transitioning military service members from, my home in the mountains that I was expecting to be in, all over the country, via Zoom, and help them with that transition into civilian employment.
Man, you hit all my questions in 4 minutes. So
Sorry.
we might need to go into some different ones. So let's
We
go
can wing
break
it.
that. Let's go break that down a little bit. So again, we're going to marry an active duty person. Now you married a veteran person. It's
Yes.
not go Marines, it's go Army now. So Army 1 in that particular guard. And so in a sense, our patriots still have the assumption that our week of TAPS, which is the transitional assistance for service members, pretty much transitional assistance program for service members, it's a 1 week collaboration of everything that gets thrown in. And there's 3 different tracks. You either have hey, I'm going to college, hey, I'm going to build a business, and hey, I'm going to do employment and whatnot. But we literally get slapped with 40 hours just learning how to wear civilian clothes, going into breaks. I just met with some of the TAPS members this week. It was a privilege to actually meet with them during lunch and whatnot. But yeah, they just go through and they're so in their zone of just getting out of the service, and then they go back to work until they leave, that I guess our patriots have not understand. But yeah, imagine going over and getting a job that you never had before and you have a week to turn around to go over and to get adjusted to that. And then you just get that week training, but then it doesn't impact you until months or sometimes years later, because you can take taps up to a year. So I want to extend to our audience that, yeah, I guess it is still that stigma. It's like, yeah, we got training. It's not as in depth as what it's supposed to be. So how often did you run into that over and over again until it made you make that pivot?
Well, I think what I saw was really just over and over these resumes that I was what we call in recruiting sourcing, where I'm going on to like your Indeed, your Monster, although no one uses Monster anymore, but LinkedIn, and I was looking at these resumes of folks who are looking for civilian work and reading the bullet points and being like, I don't know what you actually did. These aren't informative. They're not helpful to tell me about what your skills are, whether they're directly related and it's a one-to-one transfer, or if it's the same skill, different context kind of a situation. Um, Honestly, I saw it with my husband's resume. I think our second date, I was like, "How's your transition? Like I know you're job searching." Because he was on terminal leave at the time, and I looked at his resume, and I thank God he forgave me, and we went on a third date. But I laughed because the bullet points that he had been taught to write were just, from a recruiter's perspective, not at all helpful. And I see this again and again and again as I work with service members who have transitioned or are in the process of doing it. Um, the bullet points that TAPS teaches, unfortunately, aren't aren't effective and aren't going to convey to a recruiter what that recruiter needs to understand. And I saw this as I began, reviewing those resumes and then subsequently volunteering, and writing bullet points is a skill, just like anything else. It can be taught, but it's not everybody knows how to teach. I'm sure everyone's had that terrible teacher in high school who just started teaching. Um, and it can be kind of hard to articulate it. It's something that I've learned how to do over the years, in my time in higher ed, working as a career counselor.
Yeah, I'd say it's huge. And also the reading levels, depending on the branch of service, too, that is the minimum requirements. I mean, obviously, a lot of us will get associates and bachelor's degrees, but we go over and just learn how to do that particular task, and then we pivot from that.
Mm-hmm.
So unless it's our MOS, which is the maintenance occupation specialty, and yes, that is a service dog in the background, so we're really war hero to superhero. And then or AFSC, which is Air Force Specialty Code, you don't go over and touch those things. So I could go over and see. I remember my experience. It was 2012 initially going into TAPS, and I decided, I'm like, I suck at grammar, so I hired a Jewish rabbi that basically was he was a rabbi and he was a resume writer, and I paid $350, and he's like, I guarantee that you'll be able to get like government and whatever jobs, everything on this resume. If you need any tweaking, whatever. And then I just took that core resume and then I just kept it most of the time, and then I just only tweak it a little bit if I did. I did the 70% rule. I'm like, if I knew I did 70% of the job and my resume matched kind of 70%, I just went over and just flooded my resume everywhere. That contextualized resume 80% rule sitting in there, I was just pounding my head. I'm like, I could see why on the civilian side they were shocked. They said, hey, when you go into unemployment, did you apply for at least 3 jobs this week? I said, I applied for 5 jobs in the lobby. I applied for 2 to 20 jobs. It wasn't quality jobs I applied for, but I spammed my resume every opportunity that I got. So I don't know if the rest of our veterans do that, but as I'm learning, it's like that's the type of mentality, is that we know how to execute certain things, but when it comes to that is a art. So how do you break that art? How do you bring that art to us veterans? What do you do different that's compared
Um,
to everybody else?
Yeah, so I've always sort of, whether I've been in higher ed or working with private clients, it's about treating every individual as such. You are more than just your MOS. There's transferable skills in everything that you do. Um, I argue constantly with the college students I used to work with. Food service has transferable skills, right? Even if you're a server, a host, or whatever, everything we do has transferable skills. And so my approach is, what would you like to do? And a lot of people don't have the answer because they think they're stuck in whatever it is their MOS was. And it's one thing if that's what you find you really enjoy doing and you want to keep doing it in a civilian context. That's a totally different ballgame. But some people are like, I don't want to do that, but I have to. And I like to challenge the person who's in that mindset to be like, okay, let's talk transferable skills, and pull those out of the MOS, of their military experience. Okay, where does that apply in the civilian world? What jobs use that skill? And really think critically and force them to think critically and outside of that comfort zone. Because, I mean, that's the other problem with veteran employment is they're really underemployed, because they don't feel like they can do anything but their MOS. And that's just not the case.
No, I would 100% agree. I've had 7 MOSs, so I have a little more diversity than most. But the thing of it is that even for me, as I'm growing this brand, I'm more of an entrepreneur. But that in between stage, there's been opportunities. I'm like, oh, I can't go over and do that, especially on the federal side. So let's curtail a little bit on that
Mm-hmm.
one next question. So let's pretend that I was your client. So right now, I have a training NCO background. I have IT. I have mental health and everything else. And these are the type of MOSs I've had. And I want to get into a federal job. I'm currently a federal employee at a GS9 step 4. Let's say I wanted to pivot to mental health and whatnot, and they have these requirements that say either 4-year degree or experience and whatnot. How would you go over and adjust me if I just have MOS and GS experience? What would you do to help my resume to show that I've done these wonderful things, but I don't want to have to go back and get a 4 to 6 year degree, even though I've already done the work at
Mm-hmm.
MOS?
So it all comes down to how you write your bullet points. If I'm going to write a resume for somebody, I'm going to get all of the information from them in whatever way they want to convey it. It's what I call word vomit. And I did this. I did this with my husband. He was really uncomfortable, and I was like, no, no, no. I'm going to write down everything you say, just as you said it. It had 4-letter words. Just give me all the raw information. And then I'm able to comb through and say, okay, I'm seeing this skill. I'm seeing this skill. I'm seeing, okay, here's where that matches to what you're looking to do. And for me, I have a really easy time of identifying skills and just being like, oh, it sounds like you have to have this skill to do this, and get that confirmation from the person to make sure that I'm understanding what they actually did and what the skill is, because I'm able to formulate that bullet point for them to convey that skill. So it's about, okay, they're looking for 5 years of mental health counseling. Okay, tell me about that experience and what you did and what that looked like and what your volume was, and give me all the details and what went into that, that project that you did to like provide information to folks. How many people did you present to? And just getting all of the little details that people really tend to overlook when it's something they do day in and day out.
Yeah, I think that's huge because that's the hard part. I mean, we also in my background, we help veterans write their books. So we help them with their word vomit. We literally record their word vomit and then we translate that to a transcript and then we clean that up. So it sounds very similar that you're basically taking this word vomit and saying, okay, I'm just going to write down everything like a mind map. And then I'm going to see, oh, I keep seeing similarities. I keep seeing
Mm-hmm.
patterns. I keep seeing this. And then you're helping them craft that. Because I think that's the hardest thing for us is that we do so many things and there's so many emails and memos of things that we treat it like taskers because that's what we literally talk about. Like we got this tasker and this tasker and this tasker. Like today, I went through a bunch of people's training records and literally scrubbed them. So I'm doing like data analysis and data correction and manipulation and whatnot, and then doing accuracy. But I don't think of that. I just had to
Mm-hmm.
think of that on the fly with this interview. But that's not normal for me to go over and psychoanalyze that. So that's very helpful, I would say, as that. So do you continue to work with the client until they get a job, or is it one of those things that gets a one and done and then they get their resume and then they just throw it to the wind and see what happens?
So it really depends on what folks are looking for. I have packages where I'll take you through the entire process. We'll sit down and we'll talk about what do you want to do next, putting a resume together, preparing for the interview. I tell this story whenever I'm prepping anybody for an interview and they're worried. When I was a senior recruiter at a rental car company, I once had a former Marine come in for an interview for, I think, a fleet manager position. Really well qualified, shook for 45 minutes in the conference room. No joke. I'm not a large person. I'm 4'10". I'm not intimidating in any way, shape, or form. I know he's been yelled at by scarier people than I, but he was so nervous in an interview. And I always tell people that story because if a Marine is scared, it's okay for anybody to be scared because interviews are scary. And so if someone wants that, that support through their process, I have a package that's tailored to veterans, and that includes, as you feel like you need it, you can just schedule 30-minute appointments so we can talk through, okay, where are you? Like, how are things going? What do you need help with? In addition to this sort of standard, like, okay, let's get your resume together. Okay, let's look at a job posting. Most people, unless they work in HR recruiting, don't know what elements go into a job posting, what to look for, and how to know if they're qualified and when they should apply or not waste their time. And so that's something that I include in that package because it's important to have as much or as little support as you as an individual want.
Yeah, that's really in detail compared to my $350 meeting for 90 minutes, going over and getting a resume, and then I just spattered it across the known world. And I had 70, not kidding you, 70 different jobs between 2012 to 2019. It wasn't until like somebody I said, hey, you have this job. I want this job, at least for now. And can you go over and help me? And then she helped me curtail my resume because I wouldn't have won. I'm like, I've done this for a decade, but because of the resume skills, I would literally not get the job. So I thank her for helping me that. And I highly recommend anybody getting a coach or a counselor and whatnot. So let's go into the hard stuff now.
Yeah.
We're going to go into each job is different. You're dealing with your new vet spouse. You got the dog in the background and everything else. And fortunately, at least you're not moving every single time. But what's your secret fuel when the pressure and tough times come up? Because it sounds like you're balancing business, you're balancing new marriage, you got the dog, which you never know if it's going to go off. So how do you deal with that secret fuel when pressure and tough times come?
Yeah, so I've always been a really resilient person. I was actually just talking to somebody about this the other day. I just have the mentality of like I can do pretty much anything I set my mind to. I've been through, um, you know, a lot of loss on a personal, sort of from a personal perspective, and just sort of put my nose down and kept going because that's what has to be done, and that's sometimes how life is. You have to make it all work somehow, and you just have to put in the time and the effort, and always take care of yourself. So like the gym is my self-care. I get an hour at the gym every morning and about 20 minutes of quiet time when there are no small humans asking for breakfast and no one is barking at me, and the dog, not my husband, and the house, the place is quiet and I can just drink my coffee and my protein, and that's my time, and the rest of it is just putting my nose down and getting what needs to get done.
So it sounds like you've always been a go-getter, and that's a lot of gym time. I mean, you sound like my son does 3 days a week, about 3 hours a pop, so he does like 9 hours. So you're just doing it progressively every day,
Yeah,
right?
it's just once a day. I take Sundays off. That's that's it.
I still think that's a lot of gym time. I do 3 days a week. I do about 30 minutes to an hour, 3 days a week. I'm like, I'm not that hero. I used to work out with him until I got his badge because on the active duty, you had to wait until he turned 16. But the day he turned 16, I'm like, you're free. I'm done. You know? So that's really
Yeah.
cool that you get that workout time and get that quiet time because I think a lot of us go over and forget about that. We did that in the military and we got our gym time or PT time because we kind of had to. And we kind of got our quiet time in a sense that because we were like, hey, I'm done with work. I need to get away. I need to get in my nothing box. But we forget that when we get out of the service. So that is really cool. So All right, so let's get into our last question. 3 superhero tactics. I know this might grind your soul, but we'll go over and see how it goes. So we always ask this to every single guest that we go over and have. 3 superhero tactics. This is either you go over and looking at yourself in the past, or going over and thinking about your clients. Is how do you go either get yourself, if you could tell yourself like how to get from surviving to thriving, or hey, what's 3 tactics? If you only had me on 30 minutes as maybe as a career counseling person, and you just said, hey, I got to give you 3 things and this is all I need. What are you going to give me to go from surviving to thriving, maybe in the career world?
Well, I think knowing what your transferable skills are, I think is going to be really important. Knowing what you like, what you enjoy doing, what you want to do, and then setting reasonable, measurable goals for yourself. If you're embarking on a job search, right? It's not realistic. Um, and I told my husband this every time he said a job search. It's not realistic to like send out 20 applications a day. It can be done if there's that many jobs posted. Chances are there aren't going to be that you're actually a good fit for. You're just throwing things at the wall. You're overqualified. You're underqualified. It's not what you're really looking for. Be strategic. So set that goal that is realistic, that is measurable. I'm going to apply to 3 jobs I'm interested in a day that are actually a really good fit for me. That's it. That's going to move you forward without, as long as you have the right tools, i.e., resume, that's going to serve you, that's going to move you forward in the process just by the nature of the process.
Yeah, I wish I would have had you a long time ago. I guess that's the reason why, because literally they, again, when I went to the Arkansas to go get my benefits, I'm like, I already applied for 5 jobs. I mean, it's kind of disappointing and impressive at the same time. I applied for 2 million jobs over 7 years. Now that I hear it, it's just like I used to be impressed and now I'm disappointed that I applied that many, because I've had thousands of people go over and grab me, but out of the numbers, it's like the sheer fact probably when I'm like, yeah, he's just clicking to grab in and to get that number. So I guess we do have to take it a little more slower and be a little more strategic.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not applying for jobs anymore, because that'd be very hard. Only 3 in a day and I'm home 8 hours a day.
I mean, that's not necessarily the right number, but recruiting is a numbers game. Applying for jobs is a numbers game. You're not going to be asked to interview for every single job you apply for, even if you're qualified. It's You're not going to get every offer for every interview you do. Because part of the problem is with the recruiting process, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. You don't know who else they're interviewing. You're never going to beat out an internal candidate, and you have no idea if they have an internal candidate. So it's important to, hit the numbers, so to speak, but it's also important to be realistic with the numbers and make sure they're quality numbers.
Yeah, I would agree. I had a couple, like, I got a lot more strategic now that I'm in the job right now, but it's still, yeah, internal candidate 1. And then I'm like, and then I met the internal candidate. I'm like, no, I'm so more qualified than you. And I'm like,
but you'll never beat them out.
Yeah, that was the sad part.
Truly, because they already know they're a culture fit and they know the systems, and to a degree, I get it. But sometimes it's taken to a degree that it's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yep, I guess those are some of the things that we won't be able to beat, no matter if it's civilian, veteran, or military. So
yeah.
So thank you for coming on our show.
Absolutely.
The last
Thank
little
you for
part
having
is
me.
I'm going to give you the floor to either close out with like a last tip, tell us about your biz, and then maybe if you got a quote, and then I'll close out the credits.
Well, thank you again for having me. I am a former corporate recruiter, recruiting coordinator. I've worked in a number of different industries. I've worked as a career counselor in higher ed. Have a couple degrees from the University of Southern California. I regret the second one, but not the first one. I have worked with the veteran community for a number of years now. I actually worked at my rival school, UCLA, in their Veterans Resource Center, working one-on-one with students. And job searching is not fun for anybody. Civilian, veteran, military spouse. So give yourself some grace. Know that it's going to take some time. Ask for help when you're applying to opportunities. Make sure that it's something you're interested in. Don't screen yourself out. If you think you're close to being qualified, apply. If it sounds terrible, don't apply. If it might be interesting, go for it. You don't have to take an offer. So always keep that in mind. Those are probably my biggest tips. I offer a number of focus sessions. If you're just looking for help with a resume, I do a TAP resume overhaul. I do a resume build that's a little bit more expensive. I do resume review if you just want feedback that you're going to tweak your resume yourself. Career exploration if you're not sure what you want to do next. Career assessments, which will actually help you to identify your interests and what you might want to do next and offer some suggestions to look into. Networking is huge. I assist with that, informational interviews to help you explore different areas. And then packages, which will include a combination of things. Depending on the package, I offer a veteran-specific package as well, a federal resume package, and that will take you through pretty much the whole process of exploration, resume prep, interview prep, offer evaluation and negotiation, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know about a civilian offer. So lots of different services. These packages also come with additional sessions that you can just set up at your leisure. And actually everything is self-directed. So you schedule things as you want based on how quickly you want to move through stuff. And then as needed, you can schedule those additional sessions for additional support, questions, concerns, talk things through.